Battles are not won by numbers. Battles are won by minds. And tonight, we study a battle where a smaller army defeated a force so large, so overwhelming, so terrifying in its size, that most men would have surrendered before the first sword was drawn. The battlefield was Gaugamela. The year was 331 BC, and the commander who walked onto that ground, outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched, was a man named Alexander the Great. What happened on that battlefield is not just military history, it is a war doctrine for your life. And if you listen carefully tonight, you will never look at the size of your problems the same way again. Let me set the scene. The Persian Emperor Darius III had spent months preparing for this moment. He was not a man who left things to chance. He understood that Alexander had been moving across the world like a fire that would not go out. City after city, battle after battle, territory after territory. Alexander was coming, and Darius knew it. So Darius did what powerful men do when they are afraid but refuse to show it. He assembled force. Historians estimate that Darius brought more than 200,000 soldiers to the plains of Gaugamela. Let that number sit in your mind for a moment. 200,000 men. Warriors drawn from across the Persian Empire. Cavalry divisions riding in from the east and the west. Infantry formations that stretched further than the eye could track. War chariots with iron blades fitted to the wheels, designed to ride into enemy lines and cut men down like wheat. Battle elephants, archers, scythed weapons that looked like instruments from another world. And Darius did not stop there. He had the ground prepared. He ordered his engineers to flatten the battlefield, to remove rocks and uneven terrain, so that his chariots could run at full speed without obstruction. He had chosen the location carefully. He wanted open space. He wanted room. He wanted his numbers to swallow Alexander whole. Now look at Alexander. He stood with approximately 40,000 soldiers, 40,000 against 200,000. That is a 5-to-1 disadvantage. 5 Persian soldiers for every 1 Macedonian soldier. And Alexander's men were tired. They had been on campaign for years. They were far from home. They were standing on Persian ground, surrounded by Persian land, staring at a Persian army that looked like a dark horizon that never ended. Every logical calculation said the same thing. You cannot win this fight. The math does not work. Turn around. Go home. The empire is too big. The army is too large. The odds are too severe. But Alexander did not calculate the way frightened men calculate. He was not looking at the size of the army in front of him. He was looking at the structure of it. He was studying the patterns. He was watching how they moved. He was identifying where the gaps would open, where the weight would shift, where the formation would crack under the right kind of pressure. While his generals were counting soldiers, Alexander was reading the battlefield like a manuscript. And this is the first law you must write into your mind tonight. The enemy's size is not your greatest threat. Your greatest threat is losing clarity when you see how large the problem looks. Most men are not defeated by their circumstances. They are defeated by their reaction to their circumstances. They see the size of what is in front of them. They feel the weight of it. They begin to breathe differently. They begin to think emotionally instead of strategically. And the moment emotion replaces strategy, the battle is already over. Alexander refused to fight emotionally. He gathered his commanders. He looked at the battlefield. He waited. He studied. He let the Persians reveal their position, their movement, their rhythm. And then he built a plan so precise, so counterintuitive, so unexpected, that 2,000 years later, military historians still study it in war colleges around the world. Here is what Alexander did. Instead of attacking head-on, instead of taking his 40,000 men and driving them straight into the center of the Persian line, Alexander began moving his army sideways. Not forward, sideways, oblique, moving diagonally across the front of the Persian formation, as if he was marching past them, rather than at them. Now the Persian commanders were watching this, and they did what large formations always do when they are trying to match movement. They followed. They shifted. They stretched their own line to keep pace with Alexander's movement, extending their flank to match his direction, pulling soldiers from one position to fill the gap in another. Alexander was not running. He was not retreating. He was not confused. He was pulling the Persian army apart with motion. He was using their own size against them. The very thing that made them powerful, their vast numbers, their wide formation, was now becoming a liability. The more they stretched to follow him, the thinner their line became. The thinner their line became, the more spaces appeared between their units. He was creating the weakness from the outside. And then it happened. A gap opened, a small space between two Persian units. Not a large opening, not an obvious entrance. A crack, a fracture in the surface of a wall that looked completely solid from a distance. And in that moment, Alexander did not hesitate. He gave the command. Charge. Alexander personally led the companion cavalry, his elite strike force, the most disciplined, most trained, most battle-hardened horsemen in the Macedonian army. They formed a wedge formation, a tight arrowhead of cavalry, built not for width but for penetration, built not to fight the entire army but to go through one specific point at maximum velocity. And their target was not the soldiers. Their target was the king, Darius III himself. Alexander understood something that changed the outcome of that entire battle before a single Persian soldier broke and ran. He understood that an army is not a collection of soldiers. An army is an idea sustained by a leader. The moment the leader falls, the idea collapses. The moment the king runs, the empire dissolves. You do not have to defeat 200,000 men. You have to defeat the one man the 200,000 believe in. The companion cavalry drove that wedge through the gap in the Persian line with a force and a speed that the Persians had no time to reorganize against. And as Alexander's men tore toward the center, heading directly for Darius, something happened. Something that has happened in every war since the beginning of recorded conflict. The moment the leader panicked, the army collapsed. Darius looked at that wedge of cavalry coming toward him. He looked at Alexander at the head of it, not commanding from the rear, not watching from a hill, but riding personally at the front of the charge, lance in hand, eyes locked on the Persian king. And Darius did what frightened kings do. He turned his chariot around and fled the battlefield. And the moment that happened, the largest army in the world began to dissolve. Not because they were all defeated, not because every soldier was killed or captured, but because the signal was broken. The head was gone. The king had run. And when 200,000 men look at their emperor running away from a force of 40,000, the instinct of self-preservation takes over. The formation breaks. The units scatter. The chariots turn. The cavalry retreats. Live, Alexander won the battle not by defeating the army. He won it by defeating the weak point inside the army. Now I need you to understand this as a law. Write this down if you are a man who takes notes, because this is not just military doctrine. This is life doctrine. Every giant has a fracture. Every problem has a weak spot. Every system that appears impenetrable has a vulnerability somewhere inside it. Size does not eliminate weakness. Size sometimes hides weakness, but it is still there. And the man who studies the structure, who is patient enough to look past the intimidating surface, who disciplines himself to see patterns instead of just obstacles, that man will always find the crack. Alexander did not win because he was the strongest. He won because he was the most precise. And precision is something that is available to you right now, today. Not someday when you are stronger. Not later when conditions are better. Right now, with what you have, at the level you are at. But here is where most men lose. Most men fight life the way a panicked soldier fights an overwhelming enemy. They try to solve everything at once. They look at the full list of problems, the financial pressure, the relationship tension, the career uncertainty, the health challenges, the mental weight, the unresolved past, the unclear future. And they come out swinging at all of it simultaneously, expending maximum energy against minimum targets, exhausting themselves completely while moving forward almost nothing. That is not strategy. That is emotional reaction dressed up as effort. Strategic men fight differently. Strategic men fight like Alexander. They do not ask, how do I solve all of this? They ask, what is the critical point? What is the one decision, the one discipline, the one habit, the one conversation, the one breakthrough that if I strike it with full force and full focus, will cause everything else to shift? Because here is what happens when you find the critical point. The same thing that happened at Gaugamela. When the king falls, the army collapses. When you break the central stronghold in your life, the surrounding problems lose their structure. The financial pressure eases when you break through on income. The relationship tension softens when you break through on communication. The mental weight lifts when you break through on the one thing you have been avoiding. Every outer wall gets weaker when you take down the inner keep. Overwhelm disappears when focus appears. And this is not just strategic philosophy. This is scripture. Proverbs 24:6 says it plainly. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in multitude of counselors there is safety. Victory is not built on force. Victory is built on wisdom. Solomon, the wisest king who ever lived, looked at the battlefield of life and told us clearly, the man who wins is not the man with the most resources. The man who wins is the man with the best counsel, the clearest strategy, the most disciplined thinking. And Ecclesiastes 9:11 strips away every excuse the comfortable man uses to explain why the powerful always win. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. Meaning, the largest army does not always win, the fastest does not always finish first, the strongest does not always dominate. There is a dimension of war that goes beyond raw capacity, a dimension where the disciplined mind outmaneuvers the powerful army, where precision defeats size, where strategy defeats chaos. Alexander proved it at Gaugamela. Scripture declares it as eternal principle, and your life is the battlefield where you must now apply it. Let me show you what happens to the man who refuses this doctrine. The man who fights life without strategy suffers 3 predictable collapses. The first is energy collapse. He pours effort into everything and gets results from nothing. He is busy every single day, but his life is not moving. He wakes up exhausted and goes to bed with nothing accomplished that actually matters. The second is mental overwhelm. The weight of fighting on every front simultaneously breaks his thinking. He cannot plan clearly because he is always in reaction mode. He cannot build because he is always repairing. He cannot advance because he is always defending. And the third collapse is scattered effort. He strikes the army, but never the king. He attacks the symptoms, but never the source. He deals with the noise, but never finds the signal. He works harder and hits nothing important. That is what it looks like to attack 200,000 Persian soldiers one by one, instead of finding where Darius is standing. But the man who applies War Doctrine 3, the man who adopts the Gaugamela principle into his daily life, that man operates differently. He wakes up knowing his target. He is not fighting the whole battlefield. He has identified the critical point, the one lever, the one discipline, the one relationship that needs rebuilding, the one skill that needs developing, the one decision that has been delayed too long. And he is not spreading his energy across 100 different problems. He is loading everything he has into one focused strike. And when he strikes it, everything else begins to move. So, let me give you the doctrine clearly before we close tonight. War Doctrine 3. Never fight the whole battlefield. Find the critical point, then strike with everything you have. Focus defeats overwhelm, precision defeats size, strategy defeats chaos, and when the leader falls, the army follows. This is the law of Gaugamela. This is what Alexander understood, that made 40,000 men more powerful than 200,000. Not superior weapons, not supernatural strength, not divine luck. Disciplined thinking executed through decisive action at the precise moment the opening appeared. And now I am speaking directly to you. You are not looking at a Persian army, but you are looking at something. Something in your life that looks too large right now. A situation that has been sitting in front of you, waiting, growing, making itself look inevitable. A problem that has been accumulating momentum while you have been managing it emotionally instead of strategically. A battlefield that has been expanding while you have been fighting everywhere instead of finding the fracture. Stop fighting the whole army. Study the structure of your situation. Find the critical point. What is the one thing, the one decision, the one discipline, the one conversation, the one step that you have been avoiding because the weight of it feels heavy? That is usually where the fracture lives. The thing you have been avoiding is usually the king, and the king is the target. When you find it, do not wait for perfect conditions. Do not wait until you feel ready. Darius had already prepared the ground to his advantage. He had already flattened the field for his chariots. The conditions were built for Persian victory. Alexander did not need the conditions to change. He needed one opening, and when it appeared, he moved. So, will you? Life will continue to show you problems that appear massive. Situations that feel impossible. Enemies that seem too large to fight and too deeply entrenched to remove. But you now know the Gaugamela doctrine. You know that size without structure is a weakness wearing the costume of strength. You know that panic is the only weapon that can truly defeat you. You know that the battle is not won in the moment of the charge. It is won in the disciplined hours of preparation before the charge. The studying, the waiting, the reading of the patterns, the building of the plan, and then the absolute certainty when the gap appears. Strike, not hesitantly, not cautiously, not with one hand while protecting yourself with the other, with everything, with the companion cavalry, with the wedge, with your eyes locked on the king and your entire force aimed at one point. Because history does not remember the largest armies. It does not remember the men with the most resources, the most advantages, the most prepared ground. History remembers the commanders who knew where to strike. Be that commander. Come back tomorrow. We continue the campaign.